An issue that has been widely talked about, especially in South Dakota politics, is referred law 21. This is a college Republicans exclusive issue. We'd like to know more information on it, get the facts straight, and how do each of you guys view referred law 21, and what should voters know about it? Please keep your responses 3 minutes each. Open law,
Well, thank you. Referred Law 21 was titled by its sponsors when it was in the Senate. It was called Senate Bill 201. They called it the Landowner Bill of Rights. And I voted no on it, opposed it from the beginning. Basically, what it purported to do or set out to do, in my opinion, was to pave the way for carbon capture pipelines to come across South Dakota. In doing so, they have the right, according to the people that are sponsoring this bill, to use eminent domain to go across the land of people who decide they don't want to have carbon capture pipelines on their land. I have written and spoken a little bit about this, and I think the best way to explain this, at least that I think, is that this started with a couple of flawed assumptions. The first flawed assumption is that the green energy agenda and the so-called the green energy agenda, I guess I'd say, and the way that this is done was something that was inevitable and was something that was going to come across South Dakota no matter what, and that was something that has any merit whatsoever. And if you take a look at this, this came about because of what they call the Inflation Reduction Act that President Biden got passed, and it expanded greatly the Q45 tax credit program. And so the people who are investing in this, mainly Summit Carbon Solutions, a multinational corporation, has the ability to reap hundreds of millions of dollars potentially in tax credits from the federal government. And so I just said from the beginning, I didn't think this had merit, that we would basically concede that this green energy agenda is something that we should allow to come across South Dakota, use eminent domain to take people's land when traditionally that's been reserved for things like water pipelines, electrical lines, etc. This would have been an expansion of that. I ran a bill this past session that failed in one of the committees, but I'll probably bring it again to try to do a better job of defining what is public use. Because under the Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, something has to be a public use for the government to invoke eminent domain to take away your private property rights. And basically, when a private company does it, the government is essentially outsourcing the right to use eminent domain to that private company, in this case, Summit Carbon Solutions. And so for a lot of reasons, I voted no. There's been a huge outcry across the state as landowners have woken up to this. And that has led us to today where the law got referred. And I'm hopeful that the law gets overturned by the voters, and then we can pass smart legislation that defines what public use is and what it isn't. So there's certainty for both landowners and business interests when they come to South Dakota.
Sure. Briefly, I'm going to answer or rebut what was said about me. I have an email here where I sent to Shana McVickers, a very nice email which I can read during the question and answer part. Ms. Vickers' problem with me is that my very first year in the state legislature, I passed a bill on marijuana. I made it illegal or prohibited the smoking of marijuana or its derivatives in a motor vehicle, and I also fought a bill on the new hemp, which is now Delta 9 and 10, well, it's 8 and 10. So THC, Delta 9 is illegal. So what they did was they changed the way that they made hemp. So now that hemp has Delta 8 and 10 in it. And these are very intoxicating. And I can go through and tell you how they extract the marijuana, the THC from marijuana. So that's why she has a problem with me. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to protect the public from people who drive when they're under the influence of marijuana. And I could explain and tell you several instances in Lawrence County where we've had people that have injured other people when they're driving under the influence of marijuana or alcohol. Now, South Dakota is the first state in the union that allows initiatives and referendums, which a referendum is a rejecting of the legislation, which is the RL 21. So we are very lucky that we live in a state like South Dakota where we're able to do that. If the state legislature does something that some folks don't want, they can bring that to a vote of the people. And that was accomplished by a constitutional amendment in 1898. And so I just want to say that we're lucky that we don't live in Russia, where something like this would never be possible. And I would just like to add that Senate Bill 201 was passed by a Republican legislature and signed by a Republican governor. But let's allow the people to decide this issue. And so I can't wait till election day, basically, or the evening to see how that works out. But thank you very much.
Vote for it?
What?
Did you vote?
We'll get to Q&A after, but
Okay.
I'd like to hear from Greenlee next.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I read through this many times, and I picked out a few little facts that are, I think, easy for all of us to understand. And one of them was that I visualized landowners being bullied by corporations, first of all. And it's nothing more than, well, sometimes eminent domain might be necessary. I don't know if it's a road, a highway, or something like that. But when it takes away private property rights, I'm not a fan of that. So there would be a state seizure of local control, and so 300 commissioners wouldn't be in charge anymore. It would be the PUC. So. And the ambiguous language would be a problem for the PUC. So we go from 300 commissioners to just the 3 members of the PUC. And with the state in control, local governments would be limited in making their own setback laws. So, and as far as the money goes, this is something that really struck me. As far as the money paid to farmers, yes, they would be paid, I believe, $1 per linear foot. And this is just me talking, I don't think that would be enough to compensate for any destruction of life or property. The CO2 is very dangerous. And if it exploded, you know, it wouldn't have been worth that compensation. And so they wouldn't be, and then part of the problem with that is they wouldn't automatically be compensated. They'd still have to take the corporation to court. So one way or another, off to court. And so consequently, I think the RL 21 contains insufficient safeguards for citizens and for the property, and for the people who live in close proximity of that pipeline. So it also limits the ability of local governments to impose fees, including those crucial for emergency response in case there was an accident. So it would in effect be shifting the financial burden of potential pipeline incidents to the taxpayers.
Senator Duggar.
Thank you. Well, I hope you've all read the bill. If you haven't read it, you can go to the LRC site and you can print the bill and read it. I voted for this bill, and I'm not here to convince you how to vote or to ask you how to vote. I just want to talk about the facts. The fact is there's nothing on eminent domain in this bill. Nothing. The other fact is it gives landowners the ability to collect if the pipeline is placed on their property. So I call it the if bill. If the PUC gives the permit, if the landowner signs the easement, and if the pipeline is built, then these benefits to the landowners come into place. That's the most important part of the bill if you read it. The second part of the bill that I have angst with, and I think everyone did, is the taking the power away from the counties to invoke ordinances for the setbacks. Now, it's reasonable that the PUC will consider the safety standards in their application process. Everybody has the right to go to the application process and talk about the safety issues. This bill in two places guarantees that the pipeline company is liable. It's liable for everything that comes out of the pipeline, any damage from the pipeline, and the tile systems that are in place. The thing about the counties, they invoke some ordinances, and I'm going to read some of these to you. Brown County, 1,500 feet each side. Sanborn County, 1,500 feet each side. Moody County, 1,500 to a mile each side. Meade County, 25 feet in 2011 before this was an issue. Edmonds County, a half mile each side. Falk County from a half mile to 2 miles each side. Spink County from a half mile to 2 miles each side. Minnehaha, 330 feet. McPherson, a mile each side. So if I'm a landowner and I want to sign this easement and have the pipeline, through the ordinance, now there's a 2 mile corridor through my property that I have to go to the county to get permission to do anything in. That is an encroachment on property rights. So, there's no eminent domain in this bill. It only comes into effect if I, the landowner, sign the easement. And the benefits to me and the county to keep our property taxes lower or to subsidize property taxes is important. I agree, we wouldn't even be having this discussion if the federal government did not put subsidies out there. That's the world we're in. We're trying to give the landowner a benefit. Read your bill, ask any questions, vote the way you feel. Thank you.
Thank you.
So to me, the SB 201 was a bait and switch bill. They cleverly named it the Landowner's Bill of Rights, but it clearly gives corporations the right to come in and do whatever they want on your property. The climate hoax is just that. It's a hoax, okay? It's man-made, yeah, because they're tearing down all the trees. They're paving paradise and putting up a parking lot. You want carbon capture? Plant trees. Leave the farmers alone. That's how you capture carbon, okay? And all this came from the Inflation Reduction Bill. I think it's called the Inflation Production Bill because it's not doing any good. But I will tell you that there are some politicians, they got paid pretty good money to vote for this bill. So that ought to tell you right there what kind of bill it was. When people are putting money in their pocket to go against what their constituents want. That's all I got to say.
Are we going to be able to read right now?
Next thing we're actually going to talk about is,
We're not having a discussion.
I can give you 2 minutes to respond to that, and Ms. Vickers can have 2 minutes to respond as well.
I was just going to say that the federal government is the one who decides the safety when it comes to pipelines. And it's actually the state which decides, which in our case is a PUC, the routing of a pipeline. And we have a case that was decided in federal court in Iowa stating that very fact. I come from Vermillion, South Dakota. I said in my speech, where that's all we have is corn and soybeans. And so I'm looking at that farmer who's trying to make a living selling their product. And ethanol has helped our state so much. It has increased the price of corn by about 25 cents a bushel, which if you come from farm country like I have, that is a really good thing. So, was this thing initially handled well from the beginning? No, it was not. But I look on the side of the farmers. I grew up on a farm. We had acres and acres of corn. So I'm, looking out for the ethanol producers in our state, which has really changed a lot of things beneficially for us. Thank you.
Ms. Vickers, would you like to respond? 2 minutes.
Yeah, I just have one question. How much did Summit donate to your campaign?
I got no money from Summit. In fact, when the
Okay.
pipeline,
Okay,
when the pipeline was being decided, no one came to me and asked me pro or con, how I was going to vote on the
but did the money
pipeline.
make it into your bank, Ms. Fitzgerald?
I have no money from Summit. Sorry.
That's easily looked up online, guys.
Yeah.
Next